that is, if you think of the light coming on, we think in cartoons when the light bulb appears, when someone has an idea. Well, that's kind of really representing your third eye, trusting your intuition, getting this nudge, getting this image or thought in your head that makes you go, aha. And often, if it really is our intuition, it's not going to seem logical. We might not have a reason for why we feel this is the right answer, but we have this inner knowing. We can't explain it rationally to anybody else, but we just know. Welcome to the Energy Within podcast, helping you to embrace your weird, embody who you really are, and take action on your soul's purpose. My name is Carrie Jokala. I am your host. I am a Reiki master teacher, a fitness instructor, a wife, a mom to 2 little boys, and this is episode 190. We're only 10 episodes away from 200. That's pretty cool. I am recording this way too early in the morning, which is why possibly, maybe, to me at least, my voice sounds a little bit different. And that's because this is the first time I've talked out loud this morning, and it's still really early. So here we go. Today's episode is continuing our chakra series, and we are moving on to the 6th chakra, known as the third eye. The short description of this is it is really the house of your intuition. And we talk a lot about how we'll feel our intuition show up as nudges in our guts or maybe in our hearts. And while that is very true, that is your intuition talking to you, the center where your intuition actually resides is your third eye. And that is right above your actual eyes, on your forehead, in between your eyebrows. The color of this chakra is technically a purple. I think some people might say indigo, which makes me think, even though there's obviously a D in there, and there's not a D in this other one, it makes me think of Inigo from The Princess Bride. This is also my usual coffee drinking time, so I may be taking a couple moments here and there to take a sip, because I didn't get up as early as I would have liked to today. I did better than I have lately, but still not the exact time that I've been aiming to get up, which is pretty dang early. I don't know if I'm ever going to hit it, but I'm trying. So what's interesting here in the book of chakra healing is that the non-physical nature of this chakra is represented by light. So the other chakras typically represented lots of other physical things. Here we're getting into more of the ethereal as we're in the upper chakras. So here the third eye relates to light. So it says here, in the physical sense, light hits the eyes and is translated into images. We all accept that part. That's me adding on, saying that we all accept that part. In the realm of the esoteric, intuition is like a light coming on in the brain and may be accompanied by an internal image. So that is, if you think of the light coming on, we think in cartoons when the light bulb appears, when someone has an idea. Well, that's kind of really representing your third eye, trusting your intuition, getting this nudge, getting this image or thought in your head that makes you go, aha. And often, if it really is our intuition, it's not going to seem logical. We might not have a reason for why we feel this is the right answer, but we have this inner knowing. We can't explain it rationally to anybody else, but we just know. My 2 biggest examples that I can think of are the ones I always reference when I knew that I would be good at teaching group exercise classes, and also when I knew Reiki was supposed to be part of my path. Both times, I had never really experienced either of them, but I just had this inner knowing. I wouldn't have been able to explain to anybody why, since I didn't have any physical real world evidence to prove that this made any sense to pursue this. But I just knew, and I couldn't not, because there was such a push inside leading me that way that I had to follow it because it wasn't going to shut up. You probably have that stuff going on too, and that's what I'm talking about in building your confidence to the point where you feel safe and you trust yourself enough to follow those nudges, because I promise you those nudges are not going to go away until you do something about it. So specifically, we'll just dive right into this one. The third eye in a Reiki session compared to the other chakras, typically for me, the third eye and the crown are ones where I'm really just going to spend a lot of time intentionally trying to open them versus seeing exactly any kind of blocks that are going on. Like, I'm just going in right away and working on opening them, because most of us just have blocked them in some way, and in many ways even completely shut them off, especially our third eye. These two, I'm getting into the crown, I'm trying not to go too far, but especially these two, the third eye and the crown, they tend to get shut off the most. So a too open third eye will show up as someone who is highly logical, dogmatic, authoritarian, and or arrogant. A blocked third eye, you'll be undisciplined, you might fear success, have a tendency towards schizophrenia, you might set your sights too low, basically doubting yourself so much because you have that block. A balanced third eye, you'll be charismatic, highly intuitive, not attached to material things, and you might experience unusual phenomena. So you might have certain psychic abilities, but here's the thing. I've come to believe that we all have psychic abilities. It's just a matter of how blocked or open our third eye is. And we can all tap back into it. Like, I still wouldn't go out there and try to call myself psychic in that sense, because a lot of people think that it's telling the future, and that's really not what it is. It's really just trusting your intuition, trusting the images and the thoughts and the worded messages that pop into your head. And we all have different types of intuition that are stronger. I believe we all have all of them, but some of them are stronger. Like, clairvoyance is the one that everybody thinks of and seems to look at as if it's the best or most trustworthy form of psychic ability, but that's not the case. Sometimes it just is that inner knowing, which is the clairsentience, where you're kind of feeling your intuition. You have a feeling. If you say a lot, I feel that blah, 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 in whatever you're talking about, that might be your strongest clair. Clairaudience is clear hearing, so maybe if you hear messages, you hear words, and that's where you feel like you're picking up your intuitive clues, that's probably your strongest clair. So there's not one that's better than the other or meant to be trusted more than another. So just because you might not see things doesn't mean that you don't have this intuition and these abilities. But if your third eye is unbalanced, you could have things like nightmares, learning difficulties, hallucinations, headaches, poor vision, neurological disturbances, glaucoma, glandular or endocrine issues. It says this chakra is linked to the pituitary gland. This is now in the complete book of chakra healing, this part. Growth or development issues, hormonal imbalances, difficulty in planning the future, eyesight issues. Addictions usually involve over or under eating of any food and include binge purge, anorexia, bulimia, and other body image distortions. So if you don't see your body, your physical body, the way that it really is, there's some distortion there. That's a third eye issue. So I could really get myself into trouble in this one, because there's a line specifically. So the archetypes, let me start there. The archetypes for this are the psychic, which we've already started to talk about. And it says here, having honed their skills, psychics often become exceptional artists, healers, and therapists. They know the difference between theory and practice. that the truly gifted individual is one who doesn't just live by the book, but trusts their instincts to supply them with unique and telling insights. So basically, they have the power to trust themselves and trust that the answers to everything they face, everything that they need, is already inside of them. They also understand that silence and stillness are necessary to be able to actually hear the full answer and to be able to trust that it's your intuition talking to you and not someone else's voice, not the outside world, not past beliefs or past versions of yourself showing up and trying to guilt or shame you. The rationalist, having chosen not to trust their feelings, insights, and inner wisdom, perhaps because these aspects of themselves were ridiculed in childhood, rationalists force themselves to abide by a set of rules that become increasingly limiting and isolationist. And it also says rationalists are not simply people who take a, quote, scientific view of everything. This group also embraces controllers and perfectionists, those who cannot accept the human failings of others and are similarly hard on themselves. So I'm not going to dig into anything about science because for some reason that's become politicized, and that, honestly, it really pisses me off. I don't know what side of anything you're on. I'm not going to try to guess. I'm not going to tell you what side of anything I'm on. But I just think it's really stupid that science is politicized and that people seem to and that people aren't allowed to use their third eye in conjunction with science, to trust themselves, to trust their own thinking, their own logic. Because, again, I think there's a balance, like there is in every part of our lives, in every part of our energy, in every chakra. There's a balance between logic and intuition. I believe we need logic. We need evidence here in the 3D. We need the concrete. But we also need the ability to trust our intuition. If we're run completely by the 3D and completely by logic, then that's where we are cutting off our third eye and our crown connection and placing blocks in those chakras. Another interesting thing here, I'd never heard this before because I've never really looked too far into either of these people beyond whatever we were taught in school. But it says, the truly great scientists and inventors such as Albert Einstein and Thomas Edison freely acknowledged that their discoveries came from the imagination rather than logic. And I know there can be some controversy with these people too. We're not going to talk about that, but I just think that's an interesting point, that these scientific discoveries came from imagination rather than logic. It says many of Einstein's theories came from daydreams. So everything starts in the spiritual. Everything starts in the ether first. I've heard before, too, that all the ideas are floating out there, and it's just a matter of who taps into it first. And maybe multiple people have tapped into it, but then it's a race of who creates it first, who brings it into this 3D reality. I'm pretty sure that I had the idea for basically Xbox Live or whatever the other game consoles call their internet connection to play with people across the entire world first. I just had no clue how to make that happen because I was also really young. I just remember thinking on days when I would have nobody in the house to play the video games with, and I didn't really want to do like the one-player campaign against the computer. I wanted to do the multiplayer and play against somebody else, but I didn't have anybody. I would think, how awesome would that be if there were somebody even just up the road who was playing the same game? We would each still be in our houses, but somehow our consoles could connect and we could play against each other. So you heard it here first. I had that idea, and I should be a multi-billionaire at this point. Also pretty sure I had the idea for texting at one point. And I know there was a third thing where I'm like, I had that idea first. But I can't remember what it was now. Obviously, whatever it was, I didn't do anything about it. But I just think I think it's really interesting that these ideas were in my head, whether or not they were called by the names that they're called now. These ideas were in my head at one point, long before they became reality. Like, it was a long time before Xbox Live was a thing after I had first thought of it. Like, dang, I could have made a lot of money if I had any clue how to make this happen. But the point, I think, mainly with the third eye is finding that balance between logic and intuition. I am a Virgo. I am a perfectionist. I am a very logical person. I operate in many areas of my life by logic, but I've also become, especially in these last few years, since learning Reiki and just since everything in the world has become shaken up, I have leaned so much more into learning to listen to and trust my own intuition. And I've gotten more and more confirmation, especially in the last couple days, reminding me that personally, I don't know if this is relevant to you or not. It might be, it might not be, but I know that personally, me specifically, I really need to continue to embrace that I'm different. That I really do have to trust my intuition because I'm not like most people. But I guess that could be relevant because the way I described that is also kind of vague. I know there's a specific way that relates to me, but we are also all unique. And we all need to learn to trust our intuition. We got to stop listening to the outside voices. We have to stop seeking all of our answers from the outside. I think it's okay to take in the information, but just because someone else says something is true doesn't necessarily make it true. It could be true for them, doesn't make it true for us necessarily. And it could be also that there's just plain deception out there. Even if someone is saying that something's true, that also doesn't necessarily mean it's their truth. They could be outright lying because people lie. One of my favorite shows ever was House with Hugh Laurie, and that was one of his taglines, everybody lies. I think it's important to note, and it was pointed out in one episode, he didn't say everybody lies all the time, but it's part of reality, and that's a whole separate debate, but it's just reality. So we need to use our own discernment. We need to become so confident in who we are, in what we believe, that we can, kind of like I was saying in a past episode, be able to take in all the information and see it for what it is first. Information. Reserve forming an instant opinion. Reserve forming any kind of opinion or judgment until we feel like we have enough information. Because I really do feel like not enough of us do that these days. We're so quick to believe what we're told. And I think that can get dangerous in many ways. In a personal sense, it can just throw us off our own path if we're listening too much to what others are telling us. A lot of people end up going down career paths that they don't really like because they listened to people that they felt they needed to please, or because they were told it was a good idea and their gut told them otherwise, but they said, okay, fine, I'll go that path, and come to find out they should have trusted their intuition. I'm sure you've had those moments where in hindsight you realize your gut was right. So start taking the risk. It's scary in the beginning because you don't really know, because you're used to not trusting your intuition, to shutting it down, to trying to listen to logic more than that first voice, that first thought that pops into your head. But it'll get stronger if you keep taking those risks and listening to it and trusting it and just trying. Yeah, you're not always going to hit the mark probably, but your chances increase the more you practice. So get off social media once in a while. Turn off the news. Stop asking everybody else 25 different times for their opinion on what you should do in some situations when you know what your gut is telling you. Go ahead and ask for advice, but then weigh it against your intuition. Try for a minute to not weigh it against what the world is trying to tell you. Get really quiet and make sure that it's not your ego, it's not your logical brain showing up in someone else's voice or even in your voice, trying to tell you an answer that comes from the outside. Because your intuition is your higher self. Your intuition is God, because we are all pieces of God. You are your higher self. Your higher self is your soul. Your soul is a literal piece of God. That's how the answers come from God and yet are still within you. You don't have to believe me on that. That's just what I believe. So I think that's where I'm going to wrap it up, because I've got about 5, maybe 10 minutes to finish my coffee, and then I've got to wake up my kids. So wish me luck. Stay tuned as well, because I am putting together what promises to be the biggest and, in my opinion, the most exciting free challenge that I've ever done before. And we're going to relaunch Unshackled as well, coming up really soon. So make sure you are following me on Instagram at I am Carrie Jokala, and also make sure that you are inside the Energy Within Facebook group, because that's where that challenge will take place as soon as I announce it, which is coming very, very soon. And just get excited, because big things are coming. And also, last chance, if you're local, the in-person Reiki sessions at Stone and Sage in New Berlin are coming up this Saturday, May 20th from noon to 4. So make sure you call them. I may have forgotten to put the phone number in the show notes of last week's episode. I will do my best to remember to put them in this time. But either way, you can look up Stone and Sage in New Berlin and give them a call and schedule your session. I would love to see you in person for a Reiki session. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next time.